Hello, and welcome everybody to the Beacon of Light podcast this evening. This month, we have an incredible opportunity to meet so many new people. And as you can see on the screen right here, Miss Keely is one of them. And so,
Right.
this whole conference time is going to be about uniting in light. That is the conference, and we are going to be holding it on special days for all of you. As you can see right down here, it is October 4th, 6th, 11th, 13th, 18th, 20th, 25th, and 27th. Why so many dates? Because our lives are busy. And so you can just pop in each evening on those dates from 6:30 to about 7 and find something that can really help give support, talk about prevention, talk about red flags, which we're going to be talking about tonight, to help you, a coworker, a friend, or family member who might be trapped in domestic violence. So tonight we're going to be talking with Keely and her experience and journey through things. She's really going to be specific about red flag topics. So we're so excited to have her here this evening. So before we get talking to her, I would like to show you guys a few little things about her. So I think this is a great opportunity to just kind of see how she is coming along with so many great things. She is somebody who is very involved in her community, and as a matter of fact, so much so, she has just a jam-packed schedule for so many things. It's really, really incredible. So we have here tonight Miss Keely, as you can see her up on the screen. She will be talking again about these red flags. So if you anytime you have questions, please go ahead and pop it in the comment below. This conference is here for you all, and we would love for you guys to see, understand, and know what it is that she has to offer. So again, Miss Keely Crook is her name, and we are excited to have her here. She is an author, and her book is featured in a combination book called My Walk, My Way. And again, we are very happy to have her. She'll be talking a lot about these red flags right here, as you can see on the screen. And I'll pop these up throughout her conversation to reinforce and to understand. Kind of, you can take notes out there to know and check, I wonder if this is happening in my life or in my friend's life. All right, Miss Keely. So without anything more from me, let's get talking to you. So share with us about these red flags.
Hi. Yes, thank you so much for having me do this event, April. Is really an honor, and I hope that by talking today about the red flags, we can identify toxic behaviors before people get into a relationship with somebody, or even if they are in a relationship with somebody, they can identify these behaviors and that um, they might be going down a road of abuse later in life if things progress and continue. So I think that's really why it's important to identify these red flags early on, because it could definitely help you and save you from an abusive relationship later on.
That is so true.
So yeah, so the first red flag we'll talk about is um, let's see here, the talking badly about exes. And this is something that I experienced in my relationship with my partner. Um, Early on, there was talk about how this ex in particular of his was, a cheater, someone who racked up credit card debt and just really put him in a bad place. He was just quite, he was very victimized by this person. And I think this is the easiest red flag to spot because of the fact that early on in your dating process, it's something that everyone talks about. What happened in your last relationship, or why did you get divorced? And, um, if someone is the victim in most of their failed relationships, that is a huge red flag because they're not offering any sort of accountability as to how maybe they might have contributed to the demise of their relationship. If they call their ex names, that's also a red flag. So, and that ties into this talking badly about exes because, in my experience, he would reference his ex-wife as a witch, like constantly, and just rarely used her first name. So, if someone is also still angry at their ex or places full blame on them for the failure of the relationship. It might even mean that they haven't even moved on yet. So, even if it's been a number of years, they maybe still haven't healed from that breakup. So, you can't really start a new relationship with somebody if you're still angry about how the last one ended. Um, yeah, so then I guess the other thing is that gossiping can also be added in here too, because from my experience, my ex-partner had gossiped quite a bit about other people, and it happened so often that I found myself getting wrapped into the gossiping. And before and after this relationship, I have not gossiped. Like, I was never a gossiper. So you can get really sucked into that as well, and it's just a very negative place to be. And the other thing is that if you start agreeing with the gossiper on things they're gossiping about, those things can be used against you later at any point in time. So I think, that old motto, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. It really applies here. So I would advise people not to get sucked into gossiping. And if you're around a gossiper, do not participate, because those things could only be used against you later. And then lastly, if a person is gossiping about other people, chances are they're going to gossip about you. So yeah, so that wraps up that red flag with talking badly about exes, and how that really encompasses kind of a number of things there.
It does. And it's really a good check. The gossiping and the getting sucked into that is really interesting. So thank you for sharing that. So, what about the second red flag?
The second red flag is lying. So if you don't have trust in your relationship, that relationship is ultimately going to fail. Um, you have to have a strong relationship foundation. And in order to have that, it has to be built on trust. Um, Once trust is lost, it's really hard to rebuild that. So if you catch someone habitually lying to friends or family about small things, or even like especially large things, you can bet that they're going to lie to you as well. That could be about finances, drug use, other partners they've had or currently have, and hiding secrets. If it's a pattern of behavior, they might justify the lies or act like the lies are no big deal. And they might, try to minimize the issue or minimize your feelings about the lying. That also includes leaving out information as well. Because if you're not telling somebody the full story, they're not going to get the full truth. So one example of this that I put in here is, if in my experience, my partner didn't tell me about like a $10,000 loan they had. They didn't tell me before we got married, and waited till after we got married, which isn't the right time to tell somebody that sort of thing. And, you know, uh, the thing is, if he mentioned it was in deferment, so he didn't owe on it right away. But that's only giving you part of the truth. So if, you know, um, you don't think it's important just because you're not paying on something right away, it's still important later on when that loan becomes due. And that's something that you need to share with your intimate partner, especially if you're married to them. Like, it's very important that they know about these things. So if someone is lying, they should not be minimizing your feelings about the lying. They should be apologizing and making things right. And they just, at the bottom line, is they should not be lying.
Yes, exactly. Those lies really get into the tumble. So, how can you check before you step into, those next places of an engagement or even a marriage? How, like, what do you do to confront those lies? Is it the good thing to do, or is it just something you check off and say, you know what, skipping over this, I'm gonna get out before it gets too much?
Yeah. So the thing is, if you excuse lying, you can only expect more of it, in my opinion, because you've excused somebody from making amends, or, doing something to make it right. You shouldn't be excusing lies. The other thing I remember in my own relationship was that my partner had mentioned things that he had even said to his mom, or secrets he had kept from his mom, and things that he had kept from other people. And it didn't even ring a bell until later on. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's lied to other people regularly. So it just, Yeah, or fabricated things or made things seem like not a big deal when they were a big deal. So, I would not excuse lying, in my opinion. If you catch somebody in a lie and they don't try to make amends or try to make it seem like it's not a big deal when it is a big deal, especially when, like I said, in this situation, it was surrounding debt and you're married to this person. Like, it is important that you know about that. So it's up to other people how they want to handle that. But in my opinion, that would be something that you should definitely keep an eye on. And it could be grounds for ending a relationship if that's one of your boundaries and one of your deal breakers. So, and that, that should be discussed, the first time that that happens. Like, this is a deal breaker of mine. If it happens, this is something I'm not okay with. I'm going to have to think about this relationship now because this is not okay.
Right. I think it's key that, I mean, everybody, not to say it out loud, but really everybody has some lies. The key component, I'm sure of that, is if they are not sorry and if they're not trying to fix things, it's just
Mm.
going to continue. It is a pattern of control. And
Mhm.
so that's the biggest part. All right, let's go on to number 3.
Number 3 is judging and criticizing. And judging statements they tend to begin with things like you or your, and can be followed with always or never. They're just very judgy statements. They're blanket statements that don't really maybe hold much weight. They could also be statements made to others about you, like you aren't there in the room. So some examples of that might be for judging statements like you've got anxiety problems, you never do anything right, you can't take a joke, or you never follow through with anything. You always have issues with everything. Some other statements made to others about you, like you aren't there, could sound like, oh, she can't stop nagging, or she never sticks to anything, or she's crazy, or she's mental, things like that. And then criticizing insinuates that you aren't good enough or that maybe your partner could do better. So it could be criticizing your makeup, like maybe you don't wear enough makeup, or maybe you wear too much makeup. It could be criticizing your hair, like the color, style, cut, etc. It could be criticizing your body, you're too thin or you're too thick. Um, Criticizing issues with who you are, or criticizing issues with how you do things, like how you drive or how you cook, things like that. Other things, it just chips away at your self-esteem and your self-confidence. And um, it might make you feel embarrassed or judged when you try to be vulnerable with things. And in a relationship, especially an intimate relationship, you should be able to share insecurities or vulnerabilities in a safe and a safe place and not be treated negatively. Otherwise, you're going to start shutting down and just begin to not share who you are as a person.
That's right. And we don't want to have that because that leads to that oppressive feeling and that victimhood mentality, and you want to avoid all of that at all costs. So what
Yes.
is red
Mhm.
flag number 4?
Red flag number 4 is breaking your things. And I put this on here because it really started subtle in my relationship, and it was just weird. And like, uh, just trying to understand it a little bit more. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they are breaking things out of rage. So the reason I put this on here is because if someone doesn't respect your things, they just don't respect you. Your partner might make comments that your belongings are subpar, or their items are better or superior in some way. It could also surround stealing or borrowing things without asking. And even if you're married, you're two separate people operating as a team. You're not one person. So you both have your own thoughts, feelings, and personal preferences. And this extends to personal items, and respecting those personal items and respecting that person by asking for permission. Um, to use something that belongs to them. And, it may be that you ask them and maybe they think it's silly, like, oh my gosh, you don't have to ask me about that. But yeah, go ahead and use it. That's great. But at least you've taken the extra step to ask them for permission, especially if it's not something you bought and things like that. And, I think that there's this idea, even if you're married to a person, sometimes that, what's yours is mine and what's mine is mine. It's, or what's mine is yours. But some people are have different boundaries surrounding that, and that's really what I wanted to highlight, is that you have to be respectful of each person's individual boundary. You can't just assume that it's okay. So, even in marriage, people have their boundaries, and you have to respect those and talk about those, especially if you're living in close quarters. People get kind of touchy about stuff sometimes. So, it's all about, respecting that person's boundaries and making sure that, you know, you're respecting them as well. So, your partner might misuse your things in a way. They would never misuse their own items. Um, this one example of this is that, when I had first moved in, together, we both had different sets of plates. And I don't know that he didn't like mine. I don't know what the situation was at that exactly, but I wanted to keep mine too because I had literally gotten rid of almost everything else I'd owned. So, I would find that my dishes would slowly, one by one, become broken. And if I asked, it was always an accident, but yet, his plates were never broken or used in the way that mine were. So that was a red flag. And then another example would be, I bought a cordless vacuum to use it in our home, and all of a sudden, he's outside using it like a shop vac and, vacuuming up fire pit ashes. Like that's not the proper use for that. So, and then, if you go to, when I went to talk to, my partner about it, he kind of turned it around on me. Like I was being ridiculous. Like, why wouldn't you use it for that? Which is strange, right? Because we all know, like, if something's brand new, you don't want to misuse it or treat it like crap. So, this also can mean breaking items out of spite or rage. So, my sister had experienced domestic abuse, and she had told me a story about how her her boyfriend at the time had gotten mad at her and took her new printer and threw it in a fire. Like that is not okay at all. And then this is going to maybe be triggering for some people, but he got mad at her another time and then put an axe through the hood of her vehicle. And definitely not okay. It was rendered useless because she could not then spend the money to fix the radiator that was ruined because of that. And then she was in a position where she could then no longer transport herself to and from work and had to solely depend on him. So, just reasons I wanted to highlight that was just in honor of my sister as well. So,
Yeah, so
those are the
your
ones.
sister, unfortunately lost her lost her battle with things and with a relationship. And so to truly honor her, yes, I'm so glad that you brought that forward because these are life and death problems. They always start so small, but if you have somebody who is a true hunter and who does not care and the control is at all power and cost, we are talking about lives. So thank you for that, Keely. Um, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just wanted to say that, it's coming up on a year of her death, and, she wasn't murdered per se, but like I saw somebody who was a very strong individual and very opinionated turn into somebody who couldn't make small decisions on her own. So trying not to cry about that, but like this is how insidious and how, when you're in a toxic relationship like this, how it can really chip away at your self-esteem so much that you become a shell of the person you once were. And so that's why this conversation is so important for people, is to really understand, like, maybe things don't start out as like a big deal or you can brush them off or act like they don't matter. But, if you let these go over time, this is going to become a really detrimental situation and could really literally impact your life.
That's very true. And so I hope all of you listening out there have that sense of honor. If this is ringing true with any of you, and we've just covered those first five, there are four. What number are we up to?
I
It's
think they're 12.
awful.
Yeah. I added an
So,
extra bonus at the end too, so
right.
13 technically.
So please, this is why these conversations are so important. So check yourself, check on your friends, check on your coworkers, ask help, give the support that you can. If you see these within your own life, have the discussion. If you need to pull somebody in as a third party to have these discussions so you feel safe, do that. If you know that things are going down a pathway, we've got more conversations to come throughout the month of October about exit plans, about healing, about other types of prevention. So please continue to come for our Unite in Light conference. And again, Keely, this has just been a fantastic opportunity to really look at these red flags really poignantly. So let's move on to the next.
Sure. And number 5 is forgetting and denial. And the reason I put this on here is because if this is a pattern of behavior where someone is constantly forgetting or is constantly unreliable, it's not okay, because it's like, again, with the trust factor, you have to be able to trust somebody to be in a relationship with them. If you can't depend on them, that really impacts that trust level. Let's be real, everyone forgets things from time to time, but they'll apologize for that. If I forgot something, or if I didn't follow through with something, and I didn't do something I needed to do, I am going to reach out to that person. I'm going to say, "Oh my gosh, I totally forgot. I'm sorry. Let me make this up to you somehow, and let me make this right." The issue with forgetting and denial is that this, if this pattern is occurring, there's also a pattern of no apologizing or making things right. So someone who apologizes or cannot say they're sorry isn't taking responsibility, and they're not willing to say that they're wrong, behaved badly, or that they treated someone poorly. This is a gigantic red flag.
That's right.
Um, yeah, and forgetting important dates, appointments, things you've previously discussed or agreed upon, is kind of like a form of gaslighting too, because it makes you feel like did I text him? I thought he got the text, or I thought we communicated this properly. Am I losing my mind? It just makes you really doubt yourself and your sanity sometimes, and people, who are doing this forgetting and denial might say things like, "I didn't say that," or "You didn't remind me," or "I never agreed to that," or "I never said I would do that. That's not what I said." Things like that are really red flags, because if you know for sure that you've had a conversation with somebody about something and they're just completely denying it or have a pattern of forgetting it, it just really takes a toll on you, because then you're going to have to either scramble to take care of things, or just really be cautious about asking that person about doing things in the future. So they're going to be doing less of the workload in like a marriage or a relationship too. So that's really something to look out for.
Right. Let's move on to number 6.
Number 6 is withholding. So relationships require intimacy more than just an exchange of basic information. So, withholding could look like indifference, like, "I don't care what you do, that's fine," just a really like minimal way of interacting in the relationship. It could be keeping thoughts, feelings, hopes, dreams to oneself. It just never truly scratches the surface. There's no intimacy, empathy, or awareness. Withholding could also, translate into withholding sex or affection as a means to control a person. It could also, withholding is also a form of like stonewalling or the silent treatment, and it doesn't allow for solutions to problems. So you can't work toward a solution if you don't know what's wrong, or if your partner refuses to share what those problems are. So it's really, really hard to solve problems, find solutions in a relationship, because ultimately in any relationship, you're going to run into problems, but you also have to be able to be open and vulnerable with each other to be able to discuss those and work those out.
Right. Fantastic. Fantastic information there. Let's go on to number 7.
Number 7 is verbal abuse disguised as jokes. This happened quite frequently in my own relationship. It's when things that are said in jest but are not really funny, and they kind of keep you off balance, because then you're thinking like, "Okay, that's a joke. He said it in a joking manner, but that wasn't really funny, and that was directed at me." So it could be backhanded compliments that aren't really compliments. They're just plain old mean. One example might be like, "Oh, I really like those shorts," on someone else. Like that is not a compliment. Um, it could be insults and jabs meant to hurt hurt you, or your partner. It could be like mean nicknames like "Oh clumsy," and you inherited that nickname because of one time when you tripped down the stairs or something like that. Where it's revolving around one incident, and now that's your new nickname. Someone taking sensitive information you've shared with them privately and them telling other people about it is also, verbal abuse disguised as jokes, because then they're twisting the information you've shared, or they're doing it to just purposely make you feel embarrassed or shamed. That's not okay either, because again, that's breaking a boundary of trust. Like, you trusted that person to keep that information, and now they're jokingly sharing it with everybody and just making you feel like a crap. It's not okay. Other things I noted in here were startling or frightening their partner. Like, again, with the boundaries, like maybe somebody suffers from PTSD, or somebody is just doesn't like being scared, and that's something that they do because they think it's funny when they get scared. It's just not respecting someone's boundaries. And I want to also put a caveat in here that, some people, both partners might find it funny. That's different. Like, that's okay. That's not crossing a boundary. But, or they might do it to each other as a funny thing. But in certain situations, where one person has really expressed that they don't like it and the other partner continues to do it, that's where that's just not okay. It could be also things that are said or implied that undermine your self-esteem or self-confidence. Um, and it just, kind of nitpicking or making jokes about what you're wearing, or, things like that. That can also be, it could also kind of file into like what we discussed earlier about, judging or criticizing, but this kind of takes it a step further with that humor element that's not funny.
Right. And I know we've experienced that in a variety of settings, and you know what the feeling is. And if it is being repeated often, big red flag. Let's move to number 8.
Number 8 is not respecting your feelings or boundaries. And I've kind of mentioned this throughout the red flags, but this is when you specifically communicate to your partner that they have hurt your feelings, or in some way, hurt your feelings in some way, or communicate your disappointment. And they show very little to no remorse or empathy for that. Sometimes they are even offended that you are hurt. If someone doesn't respect your feelings, they don't respect you. I know I mentioned that with your stuff too, but this also goes to your feelings as well. Like, think about, your friends and family that you're close to. If they're hurt, you respect the fact that, they're hurt, and you want to know why. You want to see their perspective and try to make it right if it's something that you've done. So that's why I said, if someone doesn't respect your feelings, they just don't respect you. They might not apologize or truly try to make things right with you after they've hurt your feelings. They make no effort to understand your perspective, and they might even blame you for how you're feeling. Um, they might even push your boundaries or disregard them as well. So, one example would be if your partner's called you a name that's not a nice name, and you might, reply, "Don't call me names." And to which they respond, "I'll call you what I want to." That is completely disregarding your boundary. You just asked them to not call you names, and then they're taking it a step further, like, "Oh, you think you have a boundary? No, you don't." That's a completely toxic way of, relating to somebody. They should be saying, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that." So, the other thing in here is like when you rationally try to explain yourself, but you're not being understood, and your partner's not attempting or making any effort to understand. That was something that happened to me where, you try to rationally express, yourself or your boundaries, or, why your feelings are hurt, and they just act like it's like talking to a brick wall. Like, you do not, they, all of a sudden you're speaking a different language and they don't understand what you're trying to convey to them. That is just, they're not even trying to understand you, is the basic point there. And you might even, think about this in a way that, gosh, even at my job or my friends completely understand me just fine. Like, I don't understand where this communication problem is. Well, that means that communication problem isn't with you, it's with the person you're trying to communicate with.
Yes, and that is a really challenging type of thing where if now remember everybody, if these red flags, no one is going to be avoid of of everything. However, there is the element of being sorry, remorse, and trying to improve. If that is the bottom line, looks like pretty normal things for all of us. If the effort, the trying, because they love you, they want you to feel and be comfortable. It's that. If they never respect that, any of these red flags, it's time to go. They have to change, and they are not going to change with you. You cannot do anything if they have arrived this way. I believe fully that people can change. That's the hope. I'm a believer in Christ. I believe his atonement is all a part of that. Everything. That's what makes things possible. But they have to be to a point where they are willing to try that, to do it. They have a higher reason for that. If none of that is ever shown, and these types of things pop up here, oh, well, he only has 3. So, Keely, like only 3 out of 12, then I'm okay? Look at the overall thing. This is not a math equation. It is truly about love, empathy, being sorry, regret, and finding out what is it that they want to try to improve on.
Yeah, I
If
think you made a good
those Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. I think you made a really good point that even if there's only a few of these happening in your relationship or with someone that you know, I mean, this is this event is mostly about intimate relationships. So, if you're seeing some of these pop up and maybe not all of them, it still means you're dealing with a toxic person, especially if they're not attempting to be better. I think Oprah had talked as done a talk and multiple times as kind of like a thread where she's talked to um, I can't remember who she was speaking with, but she said, "When you know better, you do better." When you know better, you do better. And I think that does apply here for all of these red flags. That if you bring something to someone's attention, especially when it's surrounding a boundary that you have, and they then say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." They apologize for that or do try to make things better. And especially in the future, if they're not repeating that, then they're making an effort. But if you're seeing these even 3 red flags and they just continue to happen over and over and over again, that's just this person's mode of operation. You can either live with that in your relationship or know that you have a chance to have a better relationship with someone else who is going to respect you and not treat you in these ways.
That is right. And that's the point that we're trying to come about with this. And if any of you would like to read her book, it is in My Walk, My Way. And she shares a piece of this intimate relationship and story in a brilliant way, I think. And so you can go ahead and pick up this book to just kind of see more in depth. So, because she is that author, we do want to emphasize that book for her, and so you can go ahead and get that. And at the end of this conversation with this conference talk, we will put these links in at the bottom below so that you have access to all of these things. Let's go ahead and move on to number 9.
Number 9 is blocking and diverting. And this is a tactic to avoid answering a question openly and honestly. So it prevents conflict resolution from ever occurring. It also prevents meaningful discussion and shuts down effective communication. So, one example of this, and this doesn't necessarily apply to me, but just a random example is that, you ask your partner, "Where did you spend that $8,000?" And, they might reply, for a blocking tactic, it would be, "You're just trying to start a fight," or "Why are you being crazy?" or "Get off my back," or "Stop bitching." Those are blocking any meaningful conversation. To the other end of the spectrum for diverting, that's when you purposely try to get somebody off topic and turn it around on you to end any further meaningful discussion about the question you had actually asked. So, again, where did you spend that $8,000? Well, you spend money all the time, or I don't ask you where you spend your money, or how much money did you spend in your girls' weekend? It's flipping that conversation around on you to not actually give you a proper answer to the question.
Really good. That's really good to show the spectrum of what happens when things are being blocked or when things are being diverted. Excellent. So let's move on to number 10.
Number 10 is talking down to you. And this is something I experienced in my own relationship. And it really does chip away at your own self esteem because when you are constantly being treated like a child or someone's speaking to you in a really condescending tone, it's really hard to be on, it makes it clear in your relationship that you just are not on the same level, that they are acting like they are above you and you are below them. It's a form of control. They could lecture or berate you about how you are flawed somehow. In my experience, I was told constantly that I had anxiety problems, probably stemming from past relationships, even though, I felt like I was being diagnosed without, my partner being a therapist. So, they might also treat you in a manner that implies that you are less intelligent, and that could be speaking slowly so you might understand better, you know, and um, they might say things like, I'd explain it, but it's over your head, or you just want to understand it, like, indicating that you just are not as intelligent as they are.
Yeah, that's really, really degrading in so many ways. So if you feel those things, write that down, put it in. All right, we are on to number 11, I believe.
Yep. Number 11 is abusive anger. And this is something I also experienced in my relationship where it elicits this fight or flight response in you. So all of a sudden, someone is blowing up and with rage, and you experience a state of shock. It's like you are either frozen or you might even yell back just in defense, depending on your personality or how you approach fight or flight. It could be both, or eventually over time, it could be just you just shut down. And that's exactly what happened to me. I just sort of just shut down after a while. So this is a pattern of blowing up over minor disagreements, using yelling as a means to overpower you and to effectively end the conversation. It keeps you off balance, so you're not sure what might trigger the rage yelling sometimes. So you begin walking on eggshells. Um, if you try to explain yourself or attempt to get on the same page with somebody who's in this state, it just makes things worse for you. They might move into you or they might move into or break your personal space or boundary to scream with rage in your face, and they might slam their fists on the table or the counter. They might slam, cabinet doors or break things, and these are all of intimidation. They're just tactics to make you submit and allow them control. And again, it shuts down any meaningful conversation.
Yes. When conversation is closed off, the opportunity for any kind of improvement stops as well. So let's move on to number 12.
Number 12 is name calling. And even as kids, we learn early on, you don't call people names. Any name calling is abusive in any relationship. We all deserve to be treated with empathy, dignity, kindness, and respect. And in all relationships, there will undoubtedly be disagreements, but sometimes we even feel anger about things. But no matter how angry you are, it's never okay to name call. You deserve to be called by the name you were given at birth. Um, One note I wanted to make here is that people who don't respect you will purposely avoid using your proper name. They will call you anything except your correct name. They'll also misspell your name or mispronounce it, and it's a power play to make you seem insignificant.
Wow, very, very, very powerful on that. And so, if you are taking notes today, this is something that can be really life saving for so many people. And so, as you can see running on the ticker underneath there, Keely's book, My Walk, My Way, is something that's really important. And you can reach her in that Gmail account as well. And if you have anything that you'd like to discuss further with her, please do so. That is what the Unite and Light conference is all about. We want to bring you these things that we can focus on with our light to take a look and say, you know what? who you can never control anybody else. You can only change and control yourself. And so you can take a look at these things and think, I'm going to have to make a decision, or maybe I can show this to a friend who I know is suffering because they share a lot of information with me and they're asking for help. They look like they're in that victim place. And so I can give them these things for them to think about when it's the right time for them. I just want them to know I am here as a support. And we do talk a little bit about that supporters toolkit. It is a program that I have developed to show that if you are if you are someone who is in a supporting position, how you can do that, because it's not to say you now have all the answers and you can share them with somebody else, and now in a weird way you'd be controlling them again. You just want to be able to be there, and no matter how many times they might leave, come back, if you are there as that constant support, eventually their team is built and they can finally get out. These red flags are a part of these pieces. And I know for a bonus, Keely has a 13th. And before we get into talking about that, I will drop down all of those links down here below with the supporters toolkit, my walk, my way, all of the things that are needed so that you guys can enjoy this conference as we continue through the month of October, because it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And we want to give those supports so that you can get out, you can be safe. And like Keely here, she has given her life a whole new turnaround by giving this awareness, doing the hard work, and leaving. It was very tough. So give us that number 13.
So everyone's heard the term love bombing, and I was thinking about this one and I'm like, what does that really mean? Because it's people will say, oh, love bombing, but I've never heard anyone in my in my lifetime saying, oh, I totally got love bombed at the beginning of my relationship. I should have known then. That it's usually something they don't realize is even happening because you're excited at the beginning of a relationship. So the thing I wanted to point out here with love bombing, because it's such a just a kind of a vague statement, is that when someone spends a lot of time, money, energy on you and takes you on elaborate dates, buys you expensive gifts when you don't really know each other yet, it takes time to get to know someone. You wouldn't just invest a lot of time, energy, and money into something you weren't sure about. So, the reason this is a huge red flag is because they are infatuated with an idea of who they think you are. And I'm going to repeat that. It's because they are infatuated with an idea of who they think you are. And they're actually investing time and energy into a fantasy of you and are not taking the time to really get to know you as a person. So I wanted to really highlight that. This could also include excessive compliments or making your looks or surface level things a high area of focus. So they could say, oh, you're so pretty, beautiful, sexy, or hot, or make dramatic professions of love like you're my soulmate and you're my twin flame, etc. But you
I have
maybe
never heard you are my twin flame. Oh my gosh, I have to laugh at that one. You are my twin flame. Oh, I had to think how to sign that. Sorry, that was too funny. My twin flame. Oh, that was
yeah.
funny. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
But
That's
yeah,
pretty
this is what I'm
good.
talking about. Maybe you've known the person for a week or like even a month or two. Like you cannot make that level of profession with, maybe after a year of knowing somebody, you might have that information, but not after like 6 weeks even. Yeah. So I just really wanted to highlight that and bring that one to light and just kind of drill down a little bit into what I really process that to be. So
Awesome. Very, very good. So, you can see here tonight with Keely, she has some great information. I know we've shared a lot of things here on the screen. I'm going to share it one more time as we get ready to kind of close things down for the evening. But please, thank you so much for all that have come to the Unite in Light conference this evening. And you can see through these red flags right here, all of these things. And she added that bonus of the love bombing twin flame. Oh man, that's just so good. That's hilarious. So it's kind of good to end on a humorous thing with such a serious topic. So thank you. I hope
mm,
you all enjoyed this case and understanding that these things are a part of life. But if you do not see them being sorry, apologetic, trying to improve in some way and respecting in other ways, big red flags. Put them down and think about a decision of what you're going to do with that information. For those of you that are here who would like to support others, I do have a whole program called the Supporters Toolkit. And this is a program that can help you to understand different levels of how to support somebody. And so that when they make the decision underneath their power, you are ready to be there. And there's so many different things to do for that. And I know, like Keely, like myself, like many of us who were able to get out, it takes a network, it takes a plan, it takes all of these kinds of things. And so Keely tonight, she was one of those people that came here to share with us these red flags. And as we've had running on the ticker, all of the things that can be a part of this. And she talked about 13. Again, My Walk, My Way is the book that you can read about her experience and kind of get more information with that. Please go ahead and contact her at keelymywalk@gmail.com for anything further. Let's remind everybody again about our October dates, the 4th, 6th, 11th, 13th, 18th, 20th, 25th, and 27th. I know a few of these dates have already passed, but you can already go back and look at the replays here or on my website at Beacon of Light, April Tribe Juke. And we want this information to go out to be that support and to help change those lives. So, Keely, is there any last thing that you would like to share with us on this Unite in Light conference?
No, I am just really grateful to be a part of this and that I was chosen to be one of the speakers. And my hope tonight is that other people have really, that this was allowed people to open their eyes and to see if this is happening in their own relationships. And only you can understand, what you're going through. And only you can decide, if it's time to leave. What I can do is also offer some tips. I'll email those to April of just tools that I use to help identify some of these red flags in my relationship because I had a really hard time wrapping my head around what I was experiencing. And I know that I'm not the only one who probably goes through that process. But what I'll do is send that list of things that I use to help understand some of these red flags a little bit better and understand, maybe what the next step was going to be for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Everybody, you'll look at the links down here below. And thank you again for joining in the Unite in Light conference. We'll see you all next week. Bye bye, everybody.
Thank you.